Stay tuned for a special presentation of 48 Hours.
48 Hours. We take you there.
After the terror, after the tears,
everyone around me got shot.
Investigators find new clues.
The chances are even increasing that there is involvement. We still have not ruled out another gunman.
And 911 tapes reveal a new dimension to the tragedy.
I was in the library. Under the table, sit. Heads under the table. Okay. We've got help on the way, ma'am. The gun is right outside the library door. Okay? I don't run. You gotta stay on the block.
Missed warning signs, missed chances.
A lot of the kids said, "Oh, we knew what was going on." I'll tell you, the adults didn't know.
They just decided, there's nothing else in life worth living for.
As families bury their dead, a town and a nation look for answers.
He gave his life to save 200 children. His last words were, "Tell my girls I love them."
And cope with scars that may never heal.
It must have been a heroic effort on his part to get up and get out.
There has to be some meaning to this. These deaths cannot be in vain.
After the tears.
Good evening. I'm Leslie Stahl. Dan Rather is off tonight. Here's the latest in the investigation into this week's bloody massacre at Columbine High School. Police in Littleton, Colorado say they have found a diary in the home of one of the student suspects in the shootings, in which it is clear that planning for the assault started a year ago and that the attackers were going for, quote, a big kill. Based on the scale of the attack and the number and power of the explosives, including a 20-pound propane bomb, police are convinced other people were involved and the search for them is underway. Tonight, on this special edition of 48 Hours, we ask what could have caused this week's deadly rampage, and we'll ask if there are ways to keep it from happening again. We begin with John Blackstone with more on the investigation.
And I cook. What I remember most about Rachel is being my first.
As Littleton began burying its children today, a clue to the minds behind the massacre.
We have a diary of days that at some point maybe we can release some of that information, but basically it goes back 1 year. And it's a timeline that comes all the way down to the date of the actual attack.
Sheriff John Stone announced that along with computers and materials seized from the suspects, authorities have now recovered a handwritten journal kept by either Eric Harris or Dylan Klebold that goes back to April 1998. The journal is devoted to extensive plans for an action against Columbine High.
They've been planning this particular thing, and they've been building bombs for this particular thing for a considerable period of time. They've been acquiring weaponry for a considerable period of time.
The diary reveals that the massacre was a year in the planning, timed to coincide with Adolf Hitler's birthday. It documents a list of hand signals the gunman would use, and that the pair planned to burn down Columbine High.
Date 1 we do this, date 2 we do this, date 3 we do this, and then they had this all the way down to the time, 11:15 or 11:20 or whatever, that we will go in and it's rock and roll time. They were going for a big kill.
Stone could not say if accomplices were named in the diary, but since the day of the shooting, investigators have interviewed scores of students and even for a time detained several they thought might be associated with the gunman. But Stone today said he believes the school attack was not the work of just two boys.
My certainty is based on the amount of munitions and just the complexity of this whole thing. I don't think it's just two guys acting alone.
There's someone in the window holding a sign up that says, "Help, I'm bleeding to death."
When the attack began on Tuesday, SWAT team members, too, believed they may be facing several gunmen.
We didn't know if they were students, if they were some sort of terrorists. We didn't know what we had.
There's 2,000 kids in that school. How do you know which one of them has a gun?
We don't.
These members of the Jefferson County SWAT team were among the first in. And for the first time, they're telling their story of a day of confusion and anguish. Deputy Al Simmons.
The fire alarm was blaring, and it was just deafening.
Lieutenant Terry Manwaring is the team leader.
You know, there may be people on the roof throwing bombs or shooting, and you may have hostages over here.
When Kirk Bolio and Barry Williams went in, they found locked rooms filled with frightened children.
When we looked at these kids, when we opened the door, it was like we say out here in Colorado, it's like, a deer in the headlights. And we got some resistance of them holding the door and would not let us in, even though we're saying, police, let us in. We got resistance at the door from them.
Told them to put up their hands for the people outside?
Yes, we told them, everybody put their hands on their heads, and I want you guys to look straight ahead and go to that officer over there.
When Bolio and Williams reached the second-floor science room, they found another crowd of students and a badly wounded teacher, Dave Sanders.
Just telling him that he was going to be safe. You have 2 swatters here. Nothing's going to happen to you. You're going to make it. But when we got him to that point, he just wasn't alive anymore. He just passed away.
Then they moved down the hall into the library.
And when we walked in, I think the horrific scene that probably all our jaws dropped open at that point.
Girls, I mean, you're just sitting there and you're like, who would do this? I mean, this is not any way for any person to have to die.
But now there's a haunting question. Could the SWAT team have saved more lives?
Why didn't you go in there sooner?
I think because we didn't want to lose no more lives at that point.
Somebody suggests then that you guys were out there hiding behind your truck, waiting for the smoke to clear.
Yeah, I'd like them to come see me. They can pin on this badge, put on that tack jacket, and I'll stick a rifle in their hand and put them back in that scenario. See what they do.
What I wanted to say about Rachel.
It was hard to say everything they wanted to about Rachel today without tears. Rachel Scott was 16 years old. Her funeral, with the casket everyone signed, was only the first of so many funerals the emotionally exhausted students will be attending.
I just want to say that she was an inspiration to me in life and even in her death.
Rachel was just outside the cafeteria on Tuesday when the gunman arrived at the schoolyard. She was one of the first. Hardly the kind of year-end rituals these kids, any kids, deserve. These are the memories that are supposed to recall this time in the life of a teenager. The games, the all-important prom, which at Columbine was held last week.
We already had prom, it was last weekend, so that was kind of, it was lucky that that happened before, I think, because it was a time that we could all have fun before this happened and have a last fun time with all of our friends before they got injured or killed or whatever. But
Caitlin Whitney and her friends have been trying to draw meaning from tragedy. One lesson is some things that seemed so important before, like getting the perfect report card, don't seem all that important anymore.
You know, your friends died. You know, a grade doesn't matter.
Makes you see the world in a different way, doesn't it? And it's too bad you had to.
I don't know, maybe not, just because it'll help us all grow up.
Mona Madden's daughter was one of the lucky ones who made it out unhurt, but not untouched.
I mean, how much of their innocence has been lost this week?
Oh, I think a lot. I think they've had to, I mean, they saw things they never should have seen. For them to witness what they did and hear what they did, they had to have grown up.
It happened there, a tragedy happened, a horrible tragedy happened, but they'll also see that this community, not just the school, but the community all around, all stuck together and pushed through it.
The fact is, Columbine might have been the all-American high school, yet the world would never have heard of the place had it not been for the massacre. But these students would like to leave a different legacy.
I hope and I pray that Columbine will not be remembered for the horrible tragedy that happened there, but for the way that we all united after it, the way that we came together and we started to pull through it.
High school is about taking those tentative steps toward adulthood. Time to act mature, but no one should have to grow up this fast.
Only God knows why you were shot. But I know I shall never forget my beloved friend and cousin, Rachel Joy Scott.
Next,
She was an amazing girl.
after the tears, the questions. How could we miss the warning signs?
Just a duster.
Plus, terror on tape. The voices of fear.
The first call comes in at 11:25 a.m.
Okay, did you see what happened? No, I didn't. I just saw everyone running behind your house. Okay, we had a report of an explosion down there. Was it 27? Was it crossfire or anything? You know what I'm saying? What was it done?
Some report units of possible parties inside the school with weapons. Also, we have reports from outside the school that possibly remains are being thrown from the roof of the school.
Details are confusing, but clearly something terrible is unfolding at Columbine High.
There's like smoke going off in the parking lot right now. There's loud noises. I'm not sure exactly. People are running out of school like mad right now. Okay, what part of the school is that? Like the gym area, the cafeteria, or just classroom? Coming from like the commons, the lunch area right now. The commons area? Yeah.
Police surround the school and get their first glimpse of the suspects. Black trench coats. The Black Trench Coat Mafia.
Trench coats, possibly has a shotgun.
We got a couple shots off of the shooter on the southeast and southwest, I'm sorry. It's a big gun.
Attention Unit 71 is under fire. He advised the suspect just ran into the building. Is this the party in the trench coat?
Yeah, like usual, was in front of
Not long after the shooting starts,
I am a teacher at Columbine High School. There is a student here with a gun.
teacher Patty Nielsen takes a group of students to the school library, hoping they'll be safe there.
Okay, has anybody been injured? Good. Okay. And the school was in a panic, and I'm in the library. I've got students down under the table, kids. Heads under the table. Kids are screaming, and the teachers are, trying to take control of it. We need to move to. Okay. Who is the student, ma'am? I do not know who the student is. Okay. I saw a gun. I said, what's going on out there? He turned the gun straight at us and shot, and the guy in the window went out. And the kid standing there with me, I think he got hit.
We have information possibly shots fired in the library.
Okay. We've got help on the way, ma'am. Okay. Oh, God. Stay on the line. Oh, God. Just stay down. Do we know where he's at? I'm sorry? Do we know where he's at? Okay. I'm in the library. He's upstairs. He's right outside of here. He's outside? He's outside of the hall. You've got the kids there? Library. And I've got every student in this library on the floor. You better stay on the floor. Is there any way you can lock the doors? Smoke is coming in from out there. I'm okay. The gun is right outside the library door. Okay? I don't think I'm going to go out there. Okay? You're in
As it turns out, 10 of the 12 students who were shot were found in that library, not far from where Patty Nielsen made her desperate call for help. As this week has unfolded, we've learned that in the past several months, there were warning signs and other cries for help that went unheeded. Here's correspondent Bob McNamara.
If Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold were devils in disguise, a burning question everyone is asking is how did so many people miss so many signs that a massacre was in their plans?
No one who could do something did something. I knew it. A lot of people knew it, but...
Michelle Hartzo worked at Blackjack Pizza with Eric and Dylan and knew their darkest moods at work and school.
I think the teachers should have seen it. I think the school should have seen it. You know, every student was saying that they were a little weird, a little odd, and that there was something.
Nearly every student at Columbine knew that Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold were members of a clique of outcasts known as the Trenchcoat Mafia.
Question was asked this morning, well, how could you not notice 12 kids in trench coat walking down your halls?
But Columbine principal Frank DeAngelis insists he was in the dark.
To be honest with you, the first time I heard that term, trench coat mafia, was after this happened. It was on, on the television.
Yeah, they're really close friends.
17-year-old Patrick Duffy shared a lot in common with Harris and Klebold.
It's just a duster.
They were all members of the Trenchcoat Mafia and wore the same kind of coat.
It was really a Western duster.
McDuffie listened to the same German heavy metal music.
Rammstein.
Played the same violent video games. And knew of Harris's alarmingly violent website.
He had 15, 20 pages on this website that he hated everybody and everything and wanted to kill everybody and everything.
Randy Brown was especially alarmed when he saw his son's name on Harris's hit list.
We talked to his father. His father wouldn't believe he could do anything wrong. And we reported him to the police, and, we got no result.
But Harris and Klebold were already no strangers to police. They were arrested for breaking into a van, and police had visited Harris's house a year ago on a suspicious incident report. So if many knew these kids were in trouble, how did they go undetected?
There was a pattern of them.
Psychologist Richard Kastenbaum, now working with teens at Columbine High, says all the signs were there, but no one put them together.
We have a failure to communicate.
A failure to communicate among the many agencies who are working with at-risk kids every day.
In fact, authorities missed it so badly, a counselor wrote after their arrest, Dylan Klebold is a bright young man with a great deal of potential. Of Harris, he wrote, Eric is a very bright young man who is likely to succeed in life. And all this at the same time, we learned today, the pair had been stockpiling guns and bombs and grenades since last April to be used in last Tuesday's massacre.
I think she's horrified.
Hairdresser Dee Grant says Dylan Klebold's mother was in her beauty salon just 48 hours after her son slaughtered his schoolmates.
She expressed that I don't even know that boy. I don't know who that is that they're talking about.
But today, Jefferson County Sheriff John Stone said both boys' parents should have known.
But we had a lot of this stuff that was laying out very visible in the house. I think I'd be a little concerned about my son's room if I went in there and I found a sawed-off shotgun.
I feel sorry because they were crying out for help for many years, and this is how they thought they had it ended.
Just ahead, how did a weapon like this end up in the hands of a teenager at Columbine High? The story behind the guns that changed Littleton forever.
It is Saturday morning at Don's Gun Store in Indianapolis, Indiana. It's been 4 days now since the Littleton massacre, and already it's business as usual.
Get the money.
Dads and their kids are still shopping for guns.
See how it feels in your hand?
Yeah, that's light, too.
Yeah. This one is in nickel.
And owner Don Davis knows what many of them will buy.
This is the best seller, and we get a lot of oohs and ahs.
It's the High Point Firearms 9mm polymer stock carbine, one of the weapons used in Columbine High School. Davis has sold hundreds.
Clip holds 10, one in the barrel, so it's 11 shot. Clips are available. Clips cost hardly nothing. And so it's very attractive to young people. It's inexpensive.
Actually, it's dirt cheap as guns go, just $189. And so is the other semi-automatic gun the Littleton boys used, the Tech 9.
Selling for old Don here today is doing $299.95. And I give you back a half an hour on my indoor range, and I guarantee it for a year.
Federal agents say both of the Colorado weapons were sold new in gun stores in the Denver area, but the original owners sold them to someone else before the boys got them.
I'd call it in immediately and get him checked.
And Davis says that, too, happens every day.
The minute he gets out the door, he can sell the gun to anybody, and no law has been broken. Isn't that ridiculous?
Go to any police evidence room in the country, and it's clear how popular both of the Colorado guns are with criminals, especially the Tech-9. Manufactured in Miami by a company called Intratech, it's advertised as being, quote, as tough as your toughest customer. Police say gangs use them because they can be whipped out of a car window for drive-by shooting, while mass murderers favored them in Washington and San Francisco.
This is a weapon of war.
The makers of the High Point say they don't market to children. The Tech-9 company couldn't be reached, but Josh Sugarman, a gun violence expert, says it's no surprise these two guns showed up at a school massacre.
What is it about these particular guns that would make it attractive to a young person?
These guns are inexpensive, they're sexy looking, they're black, they have high capacity, high firepower, and really, even if you look at Intratech, they actually use women, half-naked women, to sell these weapons.
You got to think, though, if you're an 18-year-old kid, that's pretty impressive.
Oh, if you look at this ad and other ads from Intratech, it's basically sex sells, and now sex can sell guns.
And in Littleton, Colorado, not long ago, they found two more buyers.
It's been a week of unanswered questions in Littleton and around the country. Joining us to answer some questions is Sheriff of Jefferson County, John Stone. Sheriff, we know that you've been searching for possible conspirators, someone who may have helped the boys bring explosives into the school. Is anyone in police custody, either as a suspect or as a material witness at this point?
We have people we will be talking to. We have a lot more interviews to do. We have no concrete evidence of involvement with any person at this time, but I highly suspect we will develop those leads in the future.
In that diary you found in the boys' room, was there anything that pointed to conspirators?
There was information in there that pointed to interaction between these two gentlemen under nicknames that they had for each other. One was Vodka, and I can't recall the other. I'm not the one that actually searched it. I was shown this in a briefing by a couple of our detectives the other day when the Attorney General was here. So I don't have detailed knowledge of the note other than to say that it went from a date in April of 1998 and was continuous to the date of this massacre we've had here in 1999.
Sheriff, we understand that when the diary was found, you also found a shotgun barrel and other explosives in the boy's room on his dresser. You said in your news conference today that the parents should have known that everything was so visible. Are you actually placing some blame on these boys' parents?
I think the parents have got a responsibility for making sure their kids are doing the right thing in life here. And you expect in a boy's room to maybe see athletic things, books, things of interest, perhaps maybe video games, but not shotgun barrels, not black powder, not pipe bombs. These things were, from the investigators that I talked to that served the search warrants, many of these things were in plain view, including the barrel that was recently sawed off of one of the shotguns used in this assault.
So are you saying the parents are in some way, in some form, responsible? They should have known.
I feel they should have known.
They should have known. I want to thank you very much for joining us tonight, Sheriff John Stone.
When 48 Hours continues, why Littleton wasn't the first tragedy of this kind and may not be the last.
Over the last 20 or 30 years, we've let our teenagers raise themselves.
And this music, is it really the sound of violence?
Since Since the rampage in Littleton, a wave of copycat threats has swept the country. Dozens of students have been suspended or arrested from New Jersey to Washington State. And today, word of one deadly plot allegedly hatched even before the attack at Columbine High. In Wimberley, Texas, 5 junior high school students have been arrested and charged with conspiring to kill teachers and students. It's believed the 14-year-olds had been discussing their plans for months. But it's the events this week in Colorado that may have finally prompted other students and a school staffer to take the plot seriously. What's the matter with kids today? That familiar question is now being asked with more than a hint of desperation. Here's Richard Schlesinger.
Let me tell you, I'm not an important person. I'm a local prosecutor in my own community where I was born and raised.
Ever since the shooting, Littleton District Attorney Dave Thomas has been answering questions. Now he's asking questions. How did this happen? Could it have been prevented?
I've asked a lot of experts and consultants who have been around in the last few days, what are the answers? I mean, can you tell me how we're going to stop this and prevent this? And they say, no, we don't know the answers.
Thomas admits he's tired and frustrated.
Most of you know I've been here almost the entire time since Tuesday.
And he's weary of familiar solutions, like demands for more school security.
If that's the answer to the school violence that we experienced here on Tuesday, we are all in serious trouble, and this community's in serious trouble.
I think he's kind of getting it.
Dr. Jack Levin is a criminologist at Northeastern University who studies violence.
He's kind of out of desperation, understanding that, well, maybe we have to go beyond the short term and think about what we can do over the long haul to prevent these kinds of tragic occurrences from happening.
We need to do research, and believe me, I don't know how to do this on the kind of scale that I'm discussing, but we need to research all of the issues and share that information so that people like me can make better decisions about how we prevent violence and how we deal with violence.
There's been no shortage of experts and no shortage of recommendations following a string of school shootings. And still, Dave Thomas has all those questions.
I've been an outcast for a lot of my life. It tugs at my heart at times just because I want to be with friends. I want to make friends.
Teenagers like Richard Shannon all over the country might have some answers for Dave Thomas.
Do you understand how it could happen?
Yeah, I can understand. Not having anywhere to put your anger, not having anywhere to put your frustration and your hatred almost.
Shannon is 18, musical, athletic, and deeply religious. As different from the trench coat mafia as you can get. But even he has felt like fighting when the taunts got to be too much.
They called me like Bible boy and like preacher man and all this stuff. And I think I just felt like a burning in my stomach. And, I kind of wanted, just like smack him or something.
Would you have done it? I mean, were you close? And what did that feel like?
I wouldn't have done it. I couldn't have done it. But, the feeling was there.
In Littleton and across the country, they're asking what makes kids cross the line. Why can Richard Shannon control himself while other kids cannot?
This mass murder in Littleton might actually provoke more Americans out of fear to say, hey, wait a second, we better do something about this problem. We better address the needs and desires of our teenagers.
And if we as Americans can't seize this moment, I'm not sure what else could possibly wake us up to stuff going on in our community that has to be solved.
Melrose Avenue, Hollywood, California, a small window on the mysterious world of goth.
These are bat wings, dried bat wings. Gothic kids love bats.
Where human bones are sold as good luck charms.
Because they're small and you can put them into jewelry.
And $200 trench coats.
It's a long, dark garment. It's kind of dark and spooky.
Are a fashion statement. Shock rocker Marilyn Manson buys his clothes here.
Vampire teeth, a big seller with the Gothic kids.
And over the internet, a handful of kids from Littleton, Colorado are customers too.
Primarily Gothic punk rock accessories, just little things, face powder, makeup, spikes, studs.
And up on Hollywood Boulevard, the beat goes on at Clockwork Orange. In a small side room, the pounding beat of Gothic and industrial rock. The music two Colorado killers listened to, and some critics say were driven by. But those who dance and dress on the dark side, who live the fantasy on a Friday night, say the critics are wrong.
You know what? Those kids in Colorado, they were messed up. I listened to Marilyn Manson. I'm not a huge fan of his, but I've heard the music. We went to the concert. I don't want to go out and shoot somebody.
What they're saying here in Hollywood is being echoed in the heartland. Young people saying it's not about what they wear, it's not about the music. What happened in Colorado is not about what people listen to, it's about people not listening.
This is where the parents should step in and say, you know, hey, you're not listening to this, but, you know, if you do decide, let's sit down and look at the lyrics and talk about it.
At concert halls in Michigan and Indiana this week, Marilyn Manson fans gather to see the cross-dressing singer who inspires outrageous fashion and outrages critics with lyrics laced with vulgarity and violence. But his fans defend him. A goth girl in Grand Rapids.
If anything, he's a real positive force for many kids because, you know, it is about, you know, a lot of kids that listen to them, they do feel alienated. They do feel like they're outcasts. And I think he gives, you know, kids something to belong to and something to bond to.
A mother and daughter back home in Indiana.
It's not what music they listen to, it's how much the parents are involved and how much the parents know what's going on with their kids that matters. It's not what they listen to, it's parental involvement.
This idea that you could be possessed by music is the same kind of mentality that was behind the Salem witch trials.
Dave Kendall publishes alternative music magazines that cover the gothic and industrial rock scene. He's a defender too.
The people who are attracted to that music might tend to have more personal problems than people who are attracted to mainstream music. But it's a basic confusion of cause and effect here. I mean, you can't tell me that the kids who went up and caused murder in Littleton, Colorado were sort of happy, joyous, and free people until one day they listened to a Marilyn Manson record or they listened to a KMFDM record and suddenly they were possessed by the spirit of evil. I mean, that's just absolute crap.
Behavior experts generally agree the music's not the cause, they say, but it could add more fuel to a fire already burning in troubled young people. Back on Melrose Avenue today, some goth kids were talking about that, about Colorado and being different, and understanding the anger to a point.
I mean, I've had jocks and preps and cheerleaders, you know, make fun of me like my whole life, so I kind of relate to them in that way. I mean, I wouldn't actually go out and kill people, but I know how they feel.
Yeah, but not to the point of taking bombs and guns to school and killing everyone. That's ridiculous.
And tragic, and far darker than the curious goth culture, where darkness is both a fashion statement and sometimes state of mind, and the pounding, somber music is just music.
Just ahead, the doctor who had to make terrible choices.
From what I could tell, looking at the wounds that I saw, there wouldn't have been anything to do for most of them, even had we had a medical team right there as it happened.
Next.
There was so many lives on the line, at least hundreds during those chaotic hours at Columbine High. As Bill Whitaker tells us, there were also agonizing decisions that had to be made about who would live and who might not.
This is the trauma side.
Dr. Christopher Caldwell is a seasoned trauma expert at Denver Health Medical Center.
This is where we keep track of the patients themselves in terms of the injuries and that type of thing.
But even with all his experience, he can't shake the grisly scene he witnessed inside the Columbine High School library.
I haven't slept well since this happened. We do see dead bodies every day. To see that number of dead bodies and the young and the age that they were, I don't know how you can prepare for something like that.
Dr. Caldwell was in the emergency room getting ready to receive victims when word came that he was needed at the scene.
There were a number of ambulances already set up.
Where is my brother?
Our biggest job initially at triage was to try to be sure that we identified who the critical patients were, who needed to go to trauma centers.
What was the atmosphere?
Controlled chaos.
At about 4:30 that afternoon, a SWAT team member escorted Dr. Caldwell into the school library.
We go in, as remote as it may have been, on the hope that there may have been something to do still for somebody there. I guess the best way to describe it would be, for lack of a better word, war zone. There were ammunition clips, what appeared to be homemade explosive devices. From what I could tell, looking at the wounds that I saw, there wouldn't have been anything to do for most of them, even had we had a medical team right there as it happened. The wounds in all likelihood were instantly fatal.
But one victim who did show faint signs of life was popular teacher Dave Sanders. Dr. Caldwell made the painful decision to tell a paramedic that Sanders could not be saved and to keep searching for others who could. No doubt one of the many gut-wrenching decisions made that day.
What was your personal reaction? I don't think the reaction to the fact that these were young kids truly sunk in then, and quite honestly has sunk in yet for any of us. And probably the best time to ask the question as to what my final reaction will be weeks or months or perhaps even years from now.
Action. The story of Dave Sanders is one of the most wrenching to emerge from this tragedy. The other night, Harold Dow brought you a profile of him and his family. It's an account so full of inspiration and heroism, it deserves another look.
This is in one of his classrooms at the school. He's sitting in front of one of the computers. I mean, you can just tell by the smile on his face, you know, how much he loved what he did. He always...
His name, Dave Sanders, but his daughters just called him Daddy.
He enjoyed what he did, and he did everything he could to make sure that everybody else enjoyed it too.
And today, here in Littleton, the students at Columbine High are calling him a hero.
He was definitely a hero to show the courage that he did, risk his life to save all his students and people he didn't know.
They say it was just like Dave Sanders to put his students before himself. He'd been doing it for 22 years, as a teacher and as a coach. Lately, he talked of retiring, but Sanders' family says he couldn't tear himself away from the school or the kids.
He was specifically concerned about a few kids that had, he didn't know what to do with. And apparently they were the kids that caused this disaster.
A disaster that could have been even worse, if not for Dave Sanders.
He started the initial evacuation and told everyone to get down.
Sophomores Brendan, Dan, Sean, and Scott were there when the shooting started.
He was trying to help everybody he could.
They say Sanders tried to make it upstairs to warn even more students.
Mr. Sanders, he did show the courage that I wish I did have.
And that's when Dave Sanders was shot.
After he was shot, he was still helping people, walking around with a chest wound.
Sanders was hit twice in the chest, but with the bullets flying just behind him, he still managed to lead a group of terrified students out of harm's way into a science classroom on the second floor.
Kids came running up from the cafeteria into my classroom, and they're like, Sanders has been shot. And then, you know, I didn't believe it at first. And then I saw him come in. Blood was everywhere. He had been shot like twice, like just blood everywhere.
The people we lost to won over 100 ball games.
Cammie Harold was on the basketball team Dave Sanders coached, and in the classroom where he collapsed.
The only thing I hoped for at that time, I was praying, like, get him out of here, please. Just, you know, get him out of here.
With the gunmen still on the loose and pipe bombs scattered throughout the school, SWAT teams couldn't rescue Dave Sanders. The students and teachers trapped inside the classroom with him performed first aid, used their own clothes as bandages, and they tried desperately to keep him alive.
Doug Johnson, the biology teacher in that classroom, made a sign to put up in the window. His room faces the parking lot.
What did the sign say?
One bleeding to death.
Chemistry teacher Teresa Miller was inside the classroom. She was there as Sanders' students helped their teacher cling to life.
They took his wallet, in which he carries hundreds of pictures of his kids, and showed him the photographs. And asked Dave to tell me about who's this beautiful girl.
They said, this is why you need to live. These people love you. This is your life. This is your family.
Sophomores Mike Rotolo and Jonathan Ballard were by his side.
Did Dave Sanders say anything throughout all this?
He did. He tried to like almost stand up, and he was talking through it all, and he's just, I gotta go, I've gotta go, and stuff like that.
He was saying, if they don't get help, I'm not gonna make it.
Yeah.
Almost 4 hours after the first shots were fired, the SWAT team finally made it to the classroom. They evacuated other teachers and students first.
We were all on the stairs going down to the cafeteria, and the bomb squad people all had their guns up. Miss Miller tried to go back to Sanders, and then they yelled at her. They're like, get back down on this, totally just yelled at her, wouldn't let her go. And he was just left in the room.
Dave Sanders, still alive at that point?
Yeah, I was actually the last student out of the room, and as I was leaving the room, he said, tell my kids I love them.
Instead of, feeling sorry for himself or anything like that, he said, tell my girls I love them. And here we are.
Dave Sanders died before he could be evacuated. His students say he died so they could live.
I think he definitely was a hero, and he didn't die in vain.
And the kids say he's not the only hero teacher.
They said, Dave's a hero, you're a hero.
I'm not a hero. I just did my job. I just did what hundreds of teachers do every day.
And Dave Sanders' daughters say their dad would feel the same way. They say he died doing what he loved, helping children.
I just hope somebody was with him.
Yeah. We just need
because
closure.
he was always there for everybody else. I just hope somebody was there for him.
When we return, after the tears, the memories, one girl's haunting tribute.
We prayed all during the shootings. Please let us be okay. Let us live.
Next.
They come here to a makeshift memorial in Columbine High School's parking lot. Friends, neighbors, families, even perfect strangers. They bring flowers, they bring prayers and messages. Nikki Simpson, a freshman at Columbine High, brought a poem.
Everybody in the school was happy that day.
Mrs. Mosier's science class had just begun.
And then we started hearing the gunshots go off.
I am a teacher at Columbine High School. There is a student here with a gun.
Locked in a room along with her classmates and their teacher, as the two armed students stalked the halls outside, Nikki wrote a poem.
Okay, is anybody going to enter? Okay.
The poem is called Never.
You're just crazy. There's no one shooting downstairs. It's just a bad dream. That's all you'll see.
There are students trapped inside the school.
Now we're all on the floor. Shots heard outside. It's not a dream anymore. Not right outside our door.
We've got help on the way, ma'am. Okay. Oh, God. Stay on the line. Oh, God.
Then came the screaming. Thank God Mrs. Moe locked the doors before he finally got to our hall, which was just seconds. It's been an hour and a half now. Everyone starts to think about their friends who are down there. We prayed all during the shootings. Please let us be okay. Let us live. Then please make him stop. No more shots. Please help our friends. My pager goes off during the shooting 4 times. All our voicemail numbers, the last with the 911. I hope my parents are okay, not too worried, but I know they are. Who at the school would do this? The alarms are still going, letting us know not to go out yet. It's like an alarm clock, letting us know it's not a dream. Thank God we're okay, and that she gave us this paper and pencil. People play tat-toe, hoping to forget. They'll never forget, never.
Columbine, friend of mine, peace will come to you in time. Columbine.
A memorial service will be held in Littleton tomorrow in the shadow of the Rocky Mountains. It is from those mountains that Columbine High School got its name, after the state flower that grows in the Rockies. But Columbine is a resilient perennial that withstands the cold and the snow, coming back fresh and reborn spring after spring. It's a flower so precious to the people of Colorado that it is illegal to uproot it or pick more than 25 buds in one day. Soon the people of the town will be looking for the first buds of the columbine, the first signs of spring, a reminder of resilience and renewal and hope. I'm Leslie Stahl. For Dan Rather, good night.